And I know a lot of us has dealt with this. If you on this live, if you listen to what I'm talking about, I'm pretty sure that some of your spiritual practices you've dealt with outsiders, you dealt with common people or NPCs or the zombies, or those of religious types that will say that you doing devil work. You working with the devil, you doing dark, you doing satanic work, right? Now I'm gonna tell you this. Now I want y'all to follow me, because in some way, shape, or form they are correct. Now let me explain what I'm saying and let me break down what I mean. Because you have to understand that everything that's housed under occult or empowerment knowledge or ancient knowledge that predates the historical switchover before Christianity is housed under Satanism, right? Now we know when we do our due diligence and we spiritually understand, it's not about worship, right? We know we don't worship outside of ourselves. It's a different means of understanding, right? Because religious people can't really understand it. So when they see you work with crystals and stuff like that, they think you worship it. Because in all actuality, that's how they mind work. Because you ever notice how they react to the Bible? You can't, in their minds, the Bible's synonymous with God almost, because they worship it, because they don't understand the difference. That's just how they are. It's dogma, right? So it's dogma. So when they say you're doing the devil's work, you are. All those spiritual practices, right? This is why a lot of us can't meditate. It's because you bringing that to the surface. You bringing your shadow out. Now understand, it's different levels of people in terms of their relationship with their shadow. Now you have a lot of people who suppress their shadow. And when you talk about heavily religious and dogmatic people, they suppress the shadow. It means they want to act like it doesn't exist. It's a completely disowned part of themselves. That's how you have the whole concept of the devil. The ego itself is what creates the shadow. So in the same sense, that's why God made the devil. If we looking at it in that context, if we understand the law of correspondence, right? We understand what's in is what's out. Because they had to build it off of the same science. But they just have to flip it in a means so that you can't be receptive to it. So that you can turn away from it. That's what you have to do. So when they say that, right? When they say those things, they saying that from a lack of understanding. But in the grand scheme of things, they are right. Because that's what you bringing up. When you meditating, you bringing your shadow out. You calling your shadow forth. So if you're not prepared to meet your shadow, you're not going to do no work. Because when you bring your shadow out, and it depends on how much you have studied, quote unquote, evil. Because it's going to depict itself in terms of what you see as evil. Understand this now. So everything that your mind conjures that's dark, that's monstrous, that's unacceptable, that you're going to deny it at all costs, is the ugliest thing that you could ever bring forth in your mind. That's the whole horror movie pandemic thing that we see that's been going heavy since the 80s. It's big on the propaganda of promoting religion to you in a certain way. See, they don't care if you don't want to go to church no more and you don't want to call on Jesus. They don't care about that. It's about your mind still being split in two to not be able to see the two different poles for what they are. Because as long as you have the fear of that side, you're never going to deal with it. That's what you have to do to get to your shadow. The shit is scary, especially when you talk about people who never deal with anything pertaining to darkness. And when you talk about darkness, it's whatever people want to hide. So it could be small, it could be big. It could be selfishness, it could be greed, it could be lust. That's why you see people oftentimes being hypocritical of that which they preach against, because it's usually what they hide in the shadow. So when they say that that's what you're doing, that is what you're doing. Because you empowering yourself. You're not supposed to empower yourself. See, morals and ethics are two different things, right? When we look at morals are pertaining to societal norms, right? Norms, right? Now we know you ain't supposed to commit murder. It's some things you ain't supposed to do. But in the same sense, to rebel against that very societal system in itself is an act of evil. Understand what I'm saying now? So when they say these things, you can't be bothered by it. Because when you get bothered by them saying, oh, well, you dealing in some dark stuff, you still got work to do yourself. I know this myself personally because I had a lot of work to do in this area. Because it still comes down to a sense of acceptance. Because it's about judgment between right and wrong. That's all it is anyway. It's about a right or wrong. You can always be wrong depending on who you're talking to. Depending on where that person is standing, depending on the perspective of it. So everything that when you work with Chris, all that you're doing that's empowering your true inner self, you're always going to be seen as bad. Because it goes against the paradigm of this society of what's right. Because what's good and right is good and Christian. So if you ain't that, then you on the other side. But see, a lot of us can't accept that we on the other side. We still trying to explain away what we doing and why we doing it to people who can't even understand. Why are we explaining to them? Why are we explaining to them? See, that's shadow work. That's why we need to do that type of work. Because why we keep beating a dead horse? Why every day? Why you keep talking to the same people over and over about the same thing, getting the same response? That is insanity. Think about it. It's insanity. What keep driving you to keep doing it? You got to address the shadow. And automatically addressing your shadow is addressing your ego because they intertwine. It's a balance of light and dark. See, when you too much light, you can't deal with the darkness. You can't deal with the shadow. But see, you're not understanding when your shadow presents to you your buried gold. If you can't ever deal with your shadow, you never going to reach your highest potentials. Because in that darkness is that light. At least in the yin yang.